Hello, this is me. Oh, sorry to catch the glare. This is book one for June 2020. For book two, I'm going to be reading from, I think I have it up here. I'm going to be reading from this, and I'm going to be reading A Case for Reparations since that's in the news. I'm also going to add a daily report to all my Patreon patrons. They're adding tax to your fee or your support. So I'm going to add daily reports along with these readings. This is a long one, so let's get into it. Self-sabotage. In her various works, Karen Horney has brilliantly described the complicated role of self-hate. Its most important function is to keep its victims striving for impossible and ideal goals in quest of neurotic glory. Each failure to be gloriously ideal is met with self-hate, which in effect provides the whip to push the victim up the impossible trail again and again. In any case, the slush fund provides ample fuel to turn on oneself in the service of self-hate. Poisonous vehicles in the service of self-hate come in an almost endless variety of forms. Indeed, nearly all the poisons contain some element of self-hate. At this point, however, I want to mention a few miscellaneous poisons I've run into in practice, which were obviously self-destructive. I say obviously only because it was obvious to me. More often than not, the patient had no idea that he was enraged in twisting and in self-hating enterprise. Was engaged in twisting and in self-hating enterprises. A very blatant form of self-hate is accident proneness. Its victims are somehow involved in accident after accident with no awareness of their purposeful involvement. I saw one woman who sustained 4 fractures in 3 auto accidents, as well as multiple minor injuries, including several kitchen knife lacerations that required suturing. One woman I saw had 6 unwanted pregnancies before she became aware of the anger toward herself that was involved each time. Another woman lost an object she valued very highly each time she felt that she failed at being the ideal wife and mother. Incidentally, a battalion of people working in perfect harmony could not possibly have fulfilled her concept of ideal. For a long time, she blamed her losing of things on simple carelessness. I've also seen any number of accident and sickness-prone persons unconsciously motivated by slush turn in on themselves. One woman, not content to suffer several fractures and automobile accidents, ran from doctor to doctor until she finally managed to have her gallbladder, appendix, and uterus removed. She had no idea these were in any way onslaughts on herself. A man I knew would wait until he was firmly entrenched in a superb job and doing beautifully, then would manage to make mistake after mistake. If he wasn't fired, he'd arrive at work later and later. On one job, he actually stayed away days at a time until he was finally fired. He said there was something that kept me away, but he couldn't explain what. I remember a man who had rheumatic fever, who knew that upper respiratory infections could be fatal, but who was always managed to get sore throats. I say and mean managed, because without fail, this man made it a point, without awareness, to get chilled, wet and cold, rainy weather, and overtired when it would have been much easier to take proper care of himself. Of course, there are also many subtle manifestations of self-sabotage, though I must say that familiarity with them makes them seem anything but subtle. I think of patients I've had with an uncanny knack for forming disastrous relationships, including extraordinarily masochistic ones. One woman I saw in consultation managed to marry 3 alcoholic men, each of whom nearly beat her to death. I think of the people I've known who insist on continuing in self destructive, completely unprofitable relationships. We all know people who always manage to take jobs well below their ability or potential. We also know people who do well for a while and then somehow but inevitably manage to lose all the profits of their efforts on a good deal that turns out to be a disaster. Have you known any severe alcoholics, drug addicts, or chronic gamblers? Obsessive gambling and alcoholism are complicated illnesses. But think of the self hate involved that literally drags a man into the gutter. I have interviewed gamblers who feel relieved of tension only after they have lost everything and are absolutely ruined. The list obviously goes on and on. Self-sabotage can be acute or chronic, subtle or blatant, mild or severe enough to result in loss of life. There are people who insist on working in disaster areas or as daredevils. Self-sabotage often has many roots and can be extraordinarily or extraordinarily complicated. But I have yet to see a case that was not fed by perverted anger. And I have seen cases in which self-hate was the prime motivating force. So there's a lot of people with self-hate. A lot of people with self-hate. And there's really no reason for it. So I'm going to have one more video I'm reading from this book, and then we'll go into the next book. This has been great. There's a lot of anger, of course, justified, and we need to manage it and deal with it properly. Yes, it's good to get it out, and a lot of protesters are getting it out the right way, and now we have to think about what's next. And then we have to think about going in the future, how we manage our anger and get it out as people inflict harm on us, instead of holding it for decades and blowing up. Because truth be told, black people don't have another decade. Not American black descendants of the enslaved. No, we're vanishing, and we need to manage our mind better and our emotions better. And part of that is managing our anger. All right, I said enough. See you the next time. And until then, I want to say thank you for supporting my platform. And until next time, take care of your mind, take care of your body, and be safe.